Namaste. Welcome to Light, Laughter, and Lattes. My name is Geri Habstrittt. I'm an Avesa quantum healer, medical intuitive, and your host today for Light, Laughter, and Lattes. And if you happen to be watching this via Oneness Talk Radio, Facebook, or YouTube, welcome. You can jump into the chat. The chat is open. I have a fabulous guest with me, so you may want to ask her some questions, and we will both welcome that. But I can't go without mentioning today is a huge day. It is the opening of the Mercury retrograde, and there's like this energetic that was put in place with the Mars-Jupiter conjunction last Friday. And so there's this opportunity today to drum into reality your highest vision. So it's an exciting day. So it's a good day to be talking about your highest vision, the highest version of yourself, what you know to be true for you, and bring it into form, with the drum. And if you don't have a drum, make a drum, or, whatever you can do. But harness that opportunity. These openings happen every now and then, and it's so great to know about them so that you can use it to your advantage. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in and invite in my fabulous guest. Her name is Midge Murphy. She is an attorney, and she is the first attorney to receive her PhD in energy healing medicine. So she has a lot to share with you energy workers out there, healers, probably massage therapists, any of us who are working in these realms where there's not quite not many established boundaries yet. And so, where are our boundaries, and what is it that we really need to know so we can have a practice that protects us, protects our clients, and is good for all. So I'm really excited to welcome in Midge. And hi, Midge, welcome. Whoop, I'm not hearing you, Midge. You might have to put your earphones back on again.
Okay.
There we go. Now I hear you.
How about that?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for having me today.
You bet. I'm really excited to have you here because this is such an important topic. And I'm not sure that many people out there practicing energy healing probably really even know where the guidelines are, what the boundaries are, what we can safely do, what we shouldn't be saying on our websites, all of those things. And it's super important. And I know many states don't even have much around this. There's a lot of gray areas. So if you would share a little bit about how you got into energy medicine and how you're an attorney, and now you're combining those two things, which is fabulous for all of us.
Well, I am an attorney, but I no longer practice law. What I am is a professional liability risk management consultant, and working specifically with the legal and ethical and risk management strategies in the practice of and training in energy healing methods. So I'm kind of a bridge between two worlds. I received my PhD in energy medicine, and when I received that, what I saw was that there was a huge gap in the field, in that the issues, the ethical issues, the legal issues were just not being addressed. And it's really a hindrance to making the field more professional and having it move forward to be more integrated into mainstream healthcare. And you're not going to be able to do that until the whole field has been trained and educated around the ethical and legal issues and risk management strategies you can implement in the practice of energy healing methods. So this is kind of what I've been doing for the last close to 20 years. And I have a book, it's called Practice Energy Healing and Integrity: The Joy of Offering Your Gifts Legally and Ethically. And it's a great resource for all energy healing practitioners, whether you're licensed practitioner that incorporating energy healing methods into your practice, or you're an unlicensed practitioner. You have very different legal issues you need to think about whether or not you're licensed or you're not licensed. So the book also has, I created an exam based on the book, and that is a way for energy healing practitioners to earn a professional credential. You earn a certificate of completion, which demonstrates that you have some sort of basic understanding and level of competency in the legal issues and the ethical issues and having an energy healing practice. And I think there's what's been happening is states are more and more talking about regulating the field. And there are some states that are beginning to propose legislation that would require energy healing practitioners to become licensed. So I think what would be helpful, might be helpful, is just kind of do an overview of the regulatory framework that governs healthcare professionals. And if you're an energy healing practitioner offering your services to the public, you are a professional healthcare provider. So where we fit into this whole thing is part of the overall umbrella of complementary and alternative medicine. Now, that's a consensus term that Michael Cohn wrote about in his book, Future Medicine. He's a leading academic in this area. And what he said was basically the field of complementary and alternative medicine is everything outside of bio-Western medicine. That's a huge group. So there's chiropractic medicine, indigenous cultures, there's Ayurvedic, energy healing, tapping. There's so many different types of CAM practices. So where we fit in is in that field of energy healing practices. We fit right into that subcategory under the huge umbrella of CAM. So for example, in that field, there are some practitioners who are licensed in all 50 states, and that's chiropractors. Chiropractors, took them a long time, and they were kind of boohooed and called quacks for a long time. But now they've built a momentum, and they're licensed in all 50 states and allowed to practice. Now there's some practitioners that are licensed in some states but not in others. That would be massage therapists, naturopathic physicians, and acupuncturists. And interesting enough, acupuncture now is licensed in all but 3 states. So that's an indication of how, as they're beginning to integrate these alternative methods into the mainstream healthcare system, sort of the mechanism is first certification and then licensing. And then there's a whole group of unregulated practices, which energy healing methods fall under. So the only exception is there are a few states that require you, if you use touch, like healing touch, therapeutic touch, I'm a therapeutic touch practitioner, to be licensed as a massage therapist in order to practice. Some states specifically exempt you. I'm in Oregon. The Oregon Massage Practice Act says if you would do energy work, then you do not have to be licensed as a massage therapist. So that's one of the critical things to look at if you do any hands-on kind of energy healing, is to look at your Massage Practice Act in the state in which you have your practice. So things are kind of moving forward to bringing the field more into mainstream healthcare.
Well, and that could sound good and maybe not so good. What's your thought on that? I mean, more regulations don't sound like a great thing, but what's your thought?
Well, I'm kind of neutral, but I think what we have to remember is you're offering a healthcare service to the public. And there's this myth out there that, if you're doing energy healing, it's completely safe, no one gets hurt. And that is a complete and utter myth. I've heard so many horror stories about people being treated unfairly, unethically, harmed in some way, either emotionally or physically, with these kinds of modalities. So what the government is looking at, and the underlying regulatory value for doing some kind of regulation, is based on the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And that allows states to pass laws and regulations to protect the safety and welfare of its citizens. So all licensing statutes for all of the various healthcare fields that we have, doctors and nurses and physical therapists, and the list goes on, all the mental health care professionals, is to protect the safety and welfare of the citizens, so that when they access these practitioners, that they've demonstrated some level of competency in the services that they're offering. And so it's just kind of how our system is set up in terms of offering healthcare services to the public. So I think, there's a lot of states that are saying, hey, people are accessing these practitioners. There's absolutely no regulation. People are complaining about, being treated unfairly or mistreated, or some kind of unethical practices going on. And I'm here to be of service to the field, to say, hey, having an intention to help people is wonderful, but that's not enough. You have to understand what it is to be in a therapeutic relationship with a client. And what does that mean from a legal standpoint and an ethical standpoint? So that's what I'm all about, is about empowering and educating the field to bring practitioners so they have this knowledge and education so that they can be in better service to their client and also offer a more professional and an integrity practice to the public that they serve.
Okay, so let's say I'm just going and getting my, Reiki, whatever certifications. I'm not sure if they're licensed or how that works. And I'm going to establish my own business somewhere. What is my step one? Should I be getting an LLC? Should I be, what is the first thing
That's not your step one. Your step one is, how do you have a legally sound and ethical practice? So what you need for that is, what kind of credentials do you have? What is your training? Have you got any sort of a certificate of completion in ethics and legal issues that you can demonstrate to the public? Do you understand what the scope of practice is with regards to offering your services in the state? What words should you not use? What titles should, there's all kinds of things to consider. And that's about risk management. So that's what my book is all about. It's like, don't use these words. This is why. Don't use these titles, because the issue that we have as unlicensed energy healing practitioner is being charged with practicing medicine or psychotherapy without a license. That's the biggest threat that we have, because any kind of healing work is considered the practice of medicine. When you look at how the state medical licensing statutes are written, they're extremely broad. And so as courts started to litigate what is the scope of practice for an MD, they basically said any kind of healing work is considered the practice of medicine. So that's where it's a very slippery slope, and we have to be very careful about how we present our services to the public, so we're not perceived as practicing medicine or psychotherapy without a license. So that means being educated. So you need to be fully trained, go through a legitimate certification or training program, because again, there's a huge spectrum. There's some people that go on the internet and read a manual and say, okay, I'm a certified XYZ practitioner. Mm-hmm. And some people go to a weekend workshop and say, okay, I'm certified and I can go do this and hang out their shingle. Well, the answer is no. That's highly unethical. You can't learn something over a weekend. You can't learn how to manage and have a therapeutic relationship. What does that really mean? What does it mean to have a client-centered practice? Do you understand about transference and countertransference issues? Do you understand about how to not exploit the power differential? There's so many things that you need to learn in order to practice with ethics and to be in the highest service to your clients. So that's important. So, and whether or not what kind of a business structure you choose, that's kind of at the very tail end in terms of your education and what kinds of risk management things. So you need an audit of your website to make sure you're not inadvertently creating a legal problem for yourself based on the contents of your website. And the second piece is to have a very legally sound client agreement and disclosure statement that's written specifically to your unique practice. A form or a template is not going to make it. It's not going to be legally sound. And then the other issue is, if you want to start a practice, you talk to your accountant in terms of, okay, what do I need to do here in terms of a structure? And there's basically three structures. You can be a sole proprietor, you can form an LLC, or you can form a corporation. And those are really questions to ask your business attorney. And it depends on tax issues sometimes. The advantage of having an LLC is they're more simple to run than a corporation. And what that does is, then when you have the assets of your practice are all held by the LLC, if you have a claim made against you, then that claimant can only go after the assets of the LLC and not your personal assets. But if you have a sole proprietorship, then if you got a claim or a lawsuit filed against you, then the claimant could go against all of your personal assets because you're a sole proprietor. So that's in a nutshell a little bit about the basic structure that you have opportunity. And I do talk about that a little bit in the book. And again, it's really a business decision to talk to your accountant, because there's tax consequences as to how you bring in money and how you report that. But those are the three options to actually structure a business in terms of what you would like to do.
So then who is doing the reviewing of the website trying to, and do you need an attorney to review the website and to review your, like I give a client intake form, which is basically my disclosure form saying that I am not a doctor and, whatever. And so they know what to expect from me and they offer their information. And then it's my disclosure form too that they sign. And so ideally, should attorney be reviewing that as well?
Yes, it's a legal document. And it's one of the main risk management tools that you have if a licensing board ever came after you, or if you had a client that was unhappy and wanted to sue you. So there's certain elements that need to be in that client agreement and disclosure statement that are critical, and it's all legal stuff that you need to. So I have not met an energy healing practitioner that could do their own disclosure statement or client agreement because they just don't have the background and the training. So, and this is what I've been doing for the last 17 years. So you need somebody that knows the laws and regulations to audit your content of your website. And another risk management strategy is absolutely essential, is to have a website disclaimer. And the website disclaimer is the legal document that governs the relationship between you and visitors to your website. That's a very different legal relationship than when you work one-on-one with a client, or whether or not you're offering a workshop and you're working with some participants in your workshop. Those are all three distinct legal relationships. And so licensing boards absolutely look at websites, and if they think you're practicing medicine or psychotherapy or another licensed profession without a license, you'll get a cease and desist letter. Sometimes you'll get a fine. There's been some misinformation out there, unfortunately. You're not going to get thrown in jail. It is a crime, but you're not going to get thrown in jail. They just want you to come into compliance with what the law is. So it's important to avoid that if you can, obviously, because there have been many energy healing practitioners who have run afoul of their licensing statutes or the Federal Trade Commission. The Federal Trade Commission rules and regulations around advertising your services to the public are very strict. And so not only could you get a cease and desist letter from a licensing board say, hey, you're practicing medicine without a license, you could also get a cease and desist letter from the Federal Trade Commission saying you're misleading advertising and curative ability, you're in violation of the FTC rules and regulations. So there's a lot at stake here. And so it's about educating them, not to get everybody all scared, but to empower them, make them curious about, well, I really would like to know what it is I need to do in order to safely practice and reduce the significant risks that I have when I offer my services to the public.
So tell me a little bit more about this website disclaimer. I'm not sure. What does that look like? Where would it be on your website? Right when someone shows up, it would be something that would pop up? Or is it at the bottom of the website?
No. It doesn't protect you if it's at the bottom. So I don't know what the technical term is, but on your website you have, I call them navigation tabs. You have homepage, about, services, contact, resources. So it needs its own tab right there that says disclaimer. It's a page on your website. It's a legal document. And what I always do when I audit websites is like go to the homepage and invite. It's really important to say, welcome, please read my disclaimer. And there's a link to the disclaimer right there as well. So you're inviting someone who's coming to your website to read your disclaimer. You're not forcing them to do it, but that's the best risk management strategy to put into place, because you want to make sure the FTC requires disclaimers to be conspicuous. So they're not on a little tiny link down at the bottom of the page you can barely see. That will not protect you. So it needs to be prominent, and that's what's important in order to follow FTC rules, because they can really help save you if someone was to make some sort of a claim about what you're saying on your website, and if the disclaimer then can help protect you from that kind of thing happening.
Interesting. I'm thinking of a lot of people out there talking on public TV and whatnot that could use disclaimers as well.
Very much so. Yes. Yeah. My experience in the last almost 20 years is that 95% or more of the websites out there around energy healing are in violation of Federal Trade Commission rules and regulations, or in violation of state licensing statutes around use of title and scope of practice, and what you're calling your services. And claims and testimonials are really problematic as well. And the FTC really looks at those as well. And so you have to be really careful about those as well. And all of this is in my book. All of this discussion is in my book.
So what are the main things that you see on maybe an energy healing website that would get could potentially cause problems?
Well, there's so many. Where do I start? I'll just mention a few.
Okay.
One is how you use your title. So if you call yourself an energy therapist,
Okay.
or an energy healing therapist, the perception would be that you are offering some kind of licensed healthcare services. Never use the word therapist or therapy if you're not licensed. Obviously, a lot of people, I had somebody who was calling themselves an energy psychology practitioner. Well, that's in violation of all 50 state psychological practice acts. The words psychologist or words psychology are restricted in that by law, only licensed psychologists can use those words in marketing and title of, what they want to call themselves, the title they use for their practice. So that energy healing, the energy psychology practitioner got a cease and desist letter from 4 different psychology boards saying you are in violation of the law by using this title and you need to stop. So that's one thing. Title is huge in terms of how you can get yourself, it puts a red flag over your head. The other thing you want to be careful of is how you describe your services. You never have patients, you only have clients. If you have patients, you're practicing some kind of licensed healthcare service. You never do treatments, you never offer treatments, because treatments, the perception is you are offering some kind of licensed healthcare services. So you have sessions, you have clients, you do not have patients. And you have to be very careful of the words that you use. If you say, oh, come and do an energy healing session and I'll relieve your anxiety. Well, that puts a red flag over your head because anxiety is a mental health disorder. And as a general rule, only licensed mental health care professionals can work with people with anxiety. So you don't want to say depression. You don't want to say PTSD. All of these are psychological disorders that if you're not licensed to practice and use those terms in terms of being a licensed mental health care professional, you could be charged with practicing psychotherapy without a license. So there's a number of things to consider. So the use of title and how you describe your services. And the other issue is not making any kind of unsubstantiated claim. And claims can be a part of like a testimonial. Here's another myth out there. A lot of people say, well, my client experienced this during a session and she's written about it and I'm going to post it on my website and it's free speech. She can say whatever she wants. Well, that's not true. The Federal Trade Commission rules and regulations trump free speech. You cannot make any kind of a claim in a testimonial or anywhere else on your website, even implied claim of curative ability, unless you have competent and reliable scientific proof. We don't have that in the energy healing field right now. We have some good studies on EFT. I consider that emotional freedom techniques to be an evidence-supported technique. And then there's been some great studies that have been done on therapeutic touch and some other modalities. But by and large, most of the energy healing practices out there do not have the research behind it that they can say it's been proven, it's competent and reliable scientific proof, because that means double-blind, placebo-controlled human clinical trials. So we have to be very careful about what kind of claims we make about the services that we offer, because that can get us into a lot of hot water as well.
Wow. So what you're saying is the only kind of testimonials can really be, I enjoyed working with her. She was professional. I feel she helped me out.
It depends. I mean, it's in a vacuum. I don't know. You can say things like, I was feeling, instead of saying I was deeply depressed, you say something like, I was experiencing some sadness and going to see Shelley and doing some energy healing sessions made me feel better, something like that. So the nuances of the language are very important. And that's what I do every day is look at websites. And so, yeah, you need somebody who's a pro that knows how to actually express what you want to say and keep you out of trouble at the same time. And it's a dance of words.
So what I see what you're saying is you could You're staying away from key words that a doctor would use to describe a condition, and you're
Correct?
dancing around them using other words, feelings and emotions that describe it without actually saying what it was.
Yeah, and you have to be really careful. I mean,
Right.
you're not trained. We're not trained as psychotherapists. We shouldn't be working with psychological issues with people. We can certainly help balance the system. We can unblock blocked energy. We can rebalance. There's so many things that we can do, because what we're doing is not working on any kind of a symptom. As an energy healing practitioner, we're really helping the body rebalance and refocus. And we know that when the body is in a state of homeostasis, when it's the energy is flowing, all the subtle energies, whether it's the biofield, the chakra system, or the meridians, or whatever, when everything is in alignment and flowing, the body naturally heals itself. So we never work on the body. We are working in the subtle energy fields of the client, which then may manifest in something that the client notices and some kind of an improvement in their overall health and well-being. But we're not treating cancer or whatever else we're doing, because that's the practice of medicine, and that's not what we do as energy healing practitioners.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of a slippery slope for sure. And especially,
Yeah.
and especially with energy healing, because I know there's been many circumstances where things have, without a doubt, it was the energy healing that did it, but they could be attributed to a miracle. But if you tried to describe a miracle on the website, I mean, that would be out of the question probably, because it
Yeah,
really,
I don't know. You
yeah,
have to look at the words, but I think what's
yeah,
important is that, yes, in an energy healing session,
mm,
some things can shift really dramatically, and people can have some kind of a spontaneous um, recovery of something. Who knows what that could be? But what happens if you're not paying attention as a practitioner is that client may say, "Oh my gosh, that was so amazing! You're such an amazing healer." And as soon as you accept that projection, you have disempowered your client. And you're
right,
exploiting the power differential. Because the bottom line is, the only true healer in the room is the client.
right,
We facilitate, we can create
mm,
space, we can hold space. There's lots of different ways you can describe it, but I never heal anything. I'm creating an opportunity for the client to heal himself or herself.
right,
And you can work with their higher energies and things like that and get information, but it's important. Once you accept that projection, it dooms the relationship, because what if in 2 weeks they come back and the session, nothing happens, and then they're really angry,
right,
and because they, hey, you're supposed to be this great healer, what happened, why didn't it work this time? And that starts to fall, and that's when you get a negligence lawsuit filed, or misrepresentation lawsuit filed against you by an unhappy client. So it's really important. That's really the ethical issues around how you hold really clear boundaries, so you know what your stuff is and their stuff is, and how you can keep the biofield in balance and create harmony so that they're not projecting on you and you're not projecting on them. You have to be a really clear, compassionate, non-judgmental presence.
right,
And that takes discernment, and that takes practice, and that takes really wanting to hone those skills, because that's what makes you a better practitioner.
right. Agreed. Yep. Um, is there any more things that you think would be really important for someone listening to this to know if they're setting out? I mean, I'm already thinking in my mind what I might be doing, what I'm doing right, what I might be doing wrong, what I might have, what I maybe
Well,
need to take a
I would
second look
certainly
at.
invite, yeah, my path of service is to educate and empower. So I would invite every energy healing practitioner or a training organization that's listening to get my book. It's a
Mhm.
great resource. It's got a ton of practical information and risk management steps that you can take, so that you start to elevate your practice to a place of a level of professionalism. Because if that doesn't happen, you're going to be left behind. Because as I mentioned earlier, the states are moving towards regulating, and even potentially licensing energy healing practitioners. And so you're going to have to come up to speed, as to any other healthcare professional, as to your training and credentials. All healthcare professionals have to be knowledgeable and learn, and they're retested on almost on a every 2 or 3 years in order to maintain their license in ethics and legal issues. You can't actually offer your services. You can't be integrated into the mainstream healthcare system until that's done. And some people may say, well, I don't care. I don't want to be involved in any of that. I just want to have my little practice. Well, I think what's happening is that the states are starting to really look towards regulation, and there's some states that require you to register. Vermont is one of them. And so that's the nature of what's happening out there. So instead of like running the other direction or sticking your head in the sand, is to become knowledgeable and to educate yourself about, what it is to have a legally sound and ethical practice. And so there are tools. The book and the exam is a great resource to use. I have a revenue sharing program with training organizations. I've partnered up with a number of them, that when they're training their practitioners, if they include the book and the exam as part of the required curriculum to become certified or trained by that organization, then they earn a affiliate commission on every exam one of their students purchases. So they make a little money, they can educate their practitioners. And what's important for training organizations to know is that they can be held legally responsible for the actions of the students they train. It's the doctrine of vicarious liability. So it behooves those training organizations to make sure that their practitioners have had this ethics and legal training. It makes them look better. It's a way to be in better service to the clients they serve, and it protects them from some of the legal issues that training organizations have when they put practitioners out there in the public to offer their services.
So how does one get licensed as opposed to getting a certification? So I know I've gone through, it's called the Avesa School of Quantum Healing. And I've been with them for 15 years and have, tons of certifications. But what would be the difference between a licensure? Would it have to come through an actual public school or?
No, state's license. State's licensed practitioners. Okay. And the certification programs, they're from A to Z. So if you're listening and you're interested in engaging the services of an energy healing practitioner, here's a couple of things I would recommend. Number one, you want to actually talk to that practitioner and say, are you certified in the modalities that you offer? And what I would also suggest is that they say, I'm certified by X, Y, and Z. I would Google that organization and see what kind of certification program they have. If it's a weekend workshop, or there's no level of professionalism, then they don't require you to practice on people. They don't mentor you so that you know how to actually work in a therapeutic setting. Then that's a red flag to me. And so it's important that you ask if they've been trained in ethics and legal issues, and can they explain to you really clearly what the theoretical basis is of the methods that they offer you? They have to be able to articulate that. And that's really critical. So those are the things I would say if you're looking for engaging the services of an energy healing practitioner as a consumer or client, then it's really important to do your own due diligence to make sure that you are getting someone who's a legitimate practitioner and not someone who just decided to hang up their shingle and say, okay, I'm an energy healing practitioner, come and I'll work with you. So I think that certification goes from A to Z in terms of the quality of the programs that are out there. There's some excellent certification programs where you have to be fully trained, you have practice clients, you're mentored, your program director or your mentor will actually watch you do a practice session with a client so that they get a clear understanding that you know how to work with someone in a therapeutic setting. And so there's lots of things to consider in terms of the certification process. And that's all we have right now. There is no licensing of any energy healing practitioners, except those states that require you to be licensed massage therapists if you do hands-on healing work. And I can't remember how many states there are, maybe 15 states now that require you to be licensed massage therapists in order to offer something like Reiki or healing touch or therapeutic touch, anything that uses light touch on the body. So the only option we have to bring a level of professionalism to the field is through really high quality certification programs.
Okay. And so likewise, it may be wise for someone who is certified to list somewhere, probably hang it up on their walls, their certifications, or at least put on their websites everything that they're certified in.
Absolutely. You definitely need to rebuild your training and your certifications, your credentials. That's an important piece. And you also need to disclose you're not a licensed practitioner. So that's very clear on your website as well. And that should be in your client agreement and disclosure statement. There are some states that have safe harbor laws, and I'd like to address that for a second. Let's take California, for example. California realized that there are a lot of, they're called alternative healing arts practitioners. That would include us energy healing practitioners that want to offer their services to the citizens of California. And the threat is those practitioners are constantly under this dark cloud of being charged with practicing medicine without a license. And the legislature recognized this. And based on the core ethical principle of autonomy, which means the client's right to choose, the states passed safe harbor laws that say, okay, you're an alternative energy healing practitioner. If you don't do these things, which makes sense, you're not going to do surgery, you're not going to diagnose or treat medical conditions, you're not going to set fractures, you're not going to take x-rays, you're not going to tell someone to stop, taking their medications, and you're not going to create any kind of great harm to someone. And you have a client agreement and disclosure statement that includes all of these elements, which states some things like the theoretical basis of the modalities you offer, your training in these modalities, disclosure statements around the fact that you're not licensed and the state of California does not license your services. All of these things are required. And once you are in compliance with that safe harbor law, then you can offer your services to the public without the threat of being charged with practicing medicine without a license. And it's a huge benefit for those states that have that. And there's about 9 of them that do. But what I've found over the years I've been doing this, and I work with a ton of people in California, is that I will say, well, hey, are you aware that there's a healthcare freedom law or a safe harbor law in your state? Oh, I think I heard about that. Or no, I've never heard about that. And even if they've heard about it, they're not in compliance. So therefore, they're not protected. So again, it's more about educating and empowering. This is a great tool to have. If you are in a state that has a safe harbor law or healthcare freedom law, it's a tremendous benefit to you and allows you to practice without that dark cloud of being charged with practicing medicine without a license. So, I would, healthcare freedom laws, you could Google that. There's a healthcare freedom coalition, and they list all the states that have healthcare freedom laws. And if you're in that state, read those laws and make sure that your client agreement and disclosure statement is in compliance so that you're protected.
Right. Well, it's been a lot of great information, and you've, brought up a lot of things that I know people in the energy healing field probably haven't paid a lot of attention to, and maybe haven't had to until now. So hopefully this will bring to light a few things that we can start doing a little bit differently and be a little more diligent about to protect ourselves and to protect our businesses and to offer a better practice out there. Thank you so much for writing the book and doing what you do, because it is great to have someone with your knowledge on our side, I guess, helping us.
Yeah, well, I walk between 2 worlds. I'm an energy healing practitioner myself. I was trained in therapeutic touch as a hospice volunteer in the mid 90s. I've been initiated as a Reiki master. I'm certified in matrix energetics, and I've been a practitioner of shamanic processes for over 25 years. So I understand that world. I'm one of those folks, but I also have this background in energy medicine, my PhD, and in law and regulatory issues, so that I can be a bridge between those 2 worlds and help move the field forward. And it's really easy. You can find the book on Amazon. It's a print book. It's not a big book, but it's chock full of really important and helpful information. And the Kindle version is available on Amazon as well. The PDF version of the book is available on my my website, midgemurphy.com, as well as the exam that's based on the book. And I would really encourage, it's $150. It's a great investment in you as a practitioner to earn that certificate of completion. And also on my website, I have a number of blog articles around website disclaimers, scope of practice, other kinds of different topics that I think are really important to know about, and those are free. So I would really encourage people to take advantage of those free articles, and I would certainly encourage people that are energy healing practitioners to really seriously consider reading the book and taking the exam based on the book.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Midge, for being here. And
You're welcome.
yeah, and thank you everyone who is listening with us live or catching this later in a podcast form. I hope you have a fabulous week. Namaste, everyone.